Hey everyone, welcome to Broadband Deployment News. So the official deadline for states, communities, other entities to get challenge data into the FCC to be reflected in the next broadband map, it's officially this Friday, the 13th. That's interesting. Just thought of that. So Friday the 13th. Although there's some question, or some are saying that it's possible that it might extend. The NTIA actually might look past that date. So that's interesting. I'll be talking about that in a moment. Plus, there's a new open source tool that I saw today that could be very interesting for those that have address data that they're trying to compare with the fabric. So I will be right back and I will show that as well. Thanks for joining me. Rick Husey here with Broadband Deployment News. So again, I saw this article. So FCC broadband challenge data may be evaluated post-deadline by the Commerce Department. So I want to talk about this a little bit, and then I'm going to show this tool that somebody developed. It's an open source tool that can help you compare addresses to be able to do a challenge. So you see, maybe evaluate. This was in Broadband Breakfast just yesterday, I think. Challenge data for the FCC broadband availability map submitted after January 13th. Deadline may be evaluated by the NTIA, said experts in a Tuesday webinar hosted by the National Broadband Resource Hub. Those challenges submitted before Friday's looming deadline will be considered in the version of the map that will guide the Commerce Department's NTIA and divvying funds for the $42.5 billion Broadband Equity Access and Deployment, or the BEAD program. So that's the date that the NTI and the FCC have come out and said, if you want to get your challenges in and get them reflected in the next broadband map, so that the NTI is going to look at that data and then determine how much each state's going to get. So if you have challenges, they want you to get those in before the 13th. And there was not a lot of time to do that. With there was a good amount of time for the Broadband Fabric challenges. Those actually opened up on mid-September. I think it was September 15th or something like that. But then there's challenges. The map didn't come out till November 18th. So then more people could look at the map and you could see visually the broadband map. And so that opened on November 18th. And then we've got this deadline of January 13th in order to be able to get those challenges reflected in the next map. So right now what's happening is internet service providers have got the next version of the fabric, which contains the previous challenges that were done starting, let's say, September 15th or so, to the point where that fabric was finalized. And ISPs now have access to that fabric, and they are uploading their availability data onto that fabric, which is supposed to include all of the broadband serviceable locations in the United States. So that process has started. The next step would be for that to continue, and the deadline in that is March 1st for ISPs to get that data in. Then the FCC is going to take that data, which is the fabric, and then the service areas, locations from the ISPs that are overlaid on top of that, and they create a new broadband map, probably, I guess, May 15-ish. And then the NTIA said that June 30th is when they're going to determine, or make the determination as what the allocations are that each state is going to get. And those allocations are based on the unserved areas in a state compared to the total unserved areas in the United States. And of course, there's territories involved in there as well. So anyway, that's kind of the timeline. But again, it's kind of a short turnaround on some of these challenges. Hopefully, most of the big bulk challenges were done in the fabric challenges, but there may still be some areas that need to be looked at. And this is saying that maybe there's going to be a look at by the NTIA at some other challenges that are included after this date. And I would imagine that would be maybe major challenges, like if something didn't get in prior and there's like a big block of addresses and missing, that kind of thing, or locations that are, I guess, more missing, because that's really what's going to determine the allocation of funds is how many unserved locations the state has compared to all of the unserved locations throughout the country. So that being the case, there is an opportunity maybe to extend that. And as this article says, people should be continuing to work on this anyway. It says the challenges submitted before Fridays. I would mention that. Okay. So state and local officials are clamoring to meet the January 13th deadline, but experts indicate that local maps need not be entirely up to date by Friday. Instead, officials should be primarily concerned with the portion of available funds allocated to the state, said Alex Kelly, head of broadband consulting at Center on Rural Innovation. Local level officials should work to update maps prior to the allocation of funds from the state, he continued. So they should continue doing this. I think the most important thing, again, now is trying to get updated as many locations as you can so that the distribution of funds is as accurate as possible. Next Century Cities representative Ryan Johnson added that it's never too late to collect data to be included in the next iteration of the map. I don't know if that's exactly true, because eventually the FCC's got to cut that off. And what they're saying was January 13th is really kind of the date people should have it in. Now, sometimes you give a deadline all the time, right? It happens all the time, whatever you're doing in life. You have a deadline, and that's kind of a soft deadline. In other words, try to get it in by now because this is the best time to get it in, but then you have some wiggle room in there because you're really not going to take all of that data and do anything with it for a week or two. So there might be some wiggle room in there. But there is going to have to be a cutoff where they're going to take that data, and then from that, the new map is created. He added that there's a possibility that the Commerce Department's NTIA will consider data added post-deadline and fund allocation. So again, there could be some wiggle room there, but there will be eventually, there's going to have to be a cutoff. Crowdsourcing broadband data. So state officials attending the event expressed concern in collecting viable challenge data within a short time frame. The primary data collection method for states previous to the FCC's challenge process was speed tests, which are not being accepted by the agency, said Jake Varn, principal associate at Pew Charitable Trust. And actually, consumers can go in on an individual basis and say that they're not getting the speed that is being promised there as far as, let's say, the max download speed. Although that is not something the ISP has to respond to, the FCC has said they will take that into account if there seems to be a pattern of that. But they're going to be most concerned with those areas that are kind of on the cusp of having broadband. 25 by 3 is reported, and customers are saying they're not getting that. They're getting 10 down at best or something like that. So instead, states must turn to bulk crowdsourcing by encouraging residents to submit challenges to the state, or really to submit challenges through the broadband map. If you get all of your consumers to submit challenges through the broadband map, that automatically gets, and this is not about speed, this is about location. So when a consumer goes in and they challenge the location, for example, they might challenge things that say, I don't have broadband here, or it says I get a gig, and that says a gig is available to me, not the speed, not whether they actually get the speed, but a gig service is supposed to be available to me, and it's not. It's actually all I can get is DSL. So those kinds of things are challenged. And on those challenges, the ISP has to reply or respond, and they have to do that within 30 or 60 days. I think it's 60 days. They have to respond within 60 days. Then the FCC, if they don't respond, the FCC will just make a determination based on the facts that they have. Let's see here. Evidence of supported claims may include a service provider denying service installation. In other words, somebody calls and say, hey, can you hook me up? And they say, oh, we can't. Well, then obviously it's not a good serviceable area. Serviced area, I should say. Failing to schedule a repair or installation within 10 days of a request. It's a little bit nebulous there. Repair or installation within 10 days of request. That's not really as important as can the service be installed with a standard installation? And they say like 10 days is a standard installation. I'm not sure why repair is in there, because right now there's a lot of new fiber going in the ground. There's areas being opened up. So you've got service providers that are opening up service areas, and they're, I'm sure, getting a lot of calls that people want the service. So normally you would think 10 days would be plenty of time, but let's say it's very busy and they've got a lot of people calling to get service. And they only have so many service technicians that can go out and do an install. It could go past 10 days. And repairs could go past 10 days in certain areas. Or it's also flu and COVID season. So, maybe they have a certain number of installers, plus they've got some people out sick, plus they've got a lot of demand. So certainly it's possible that if somebody could get service at an address, that it might take more than 10 days for that service provider to get out there and install the service, considering how busy they are, and or other things, like I say, maybe people being out sick. The real question there is, can somebody call? Is the service actually available at that address? Can they call, get an installation, pay the normal standard installation price, not have to have the internet service provider extend their network to get to them? In other words, it's not this long driveway that they have to do all kinds of things to get down, and maybe charge more as well. So that's what they're looking for. let's see, and then requiring new and non-standard equipment, or having no wireless or satellite signal available. And then again, requesting more than the standard installation fee. I missed that. So again, if they say, well, you got a long driveway, so it's going to cost $1,000 for us to bore through there and get under the driveway and do this and that, that's not a standard installation. Ohio engineered a crowdsourcing program to reach those known unserved locations through mail with information on how to file a challenge via phone number or email. Mississippi followed suit by establishing a hotline for unconnected residents to submit their filings. And again, people can do this through the broadband map. And as I talked about in a previous broadcast, I can't remember if it was yesterday was Tech Tuesday. So I think Monday, I talked about some some outreach tools that are available from the FCC for states or whoever to promote consumers going out and challenging the broadband maps. And I will go ahead and provide a link to that. I'll show it here in a minute. But so that's available. So let's see. Kelly suggested that states looking to improve outsourcing efforts involve more people and tap into grassroots energies already existing in the community. Connect crowdsourcing to broadband initiatives that already exist, he suggested. Make a culture and movement around broadband access rather than a one-time initiative. Well, again, a lot of these outreach tools can be helpful. There are audio spots, there's video help, there are flyers, those kinds of things. So, in fact, do I have that up here? Yeah, right here. So that is what I'm talking about. So there's this National Broadband Map Outreach Toolkit. So again, you've got posters, handouts, infographics. As I mentioned, there's a couple of audio files like PSAs, and there's the script as well as just the audio files. So this could be something that could run on radio. There's some video help for how to do challenges in a mobile browser and a desktop browser. FCC speed test app demo. So a lot of good information here. I will link to that as well. And I just did a broadcast about this the other day, but I'll just go ahead and link to it here. Now, as I mentioned, there's a new tool here for finding fabric challenges. So I saw this on broadband.money on their announcements page on their broadband community. So this is from Robert Martin, principal at Works Public LLC. So he's created, when I say he, I don't know if it's he or his organization. It might be he, the way he's talking about it here. It says, for those of you still reviewing the fabric and submitting challenges, I wanted to share a new tool called Tailor that can help turn up missing locations, invalid addresses, and other mistakes in the fabric data. Here's a quick video. So he's got a video explaining that. And then he says it's an open source tool that compares your copy of the fabric against ground truth data in your area, such as parcels, 9/11 addresses, and building footprints. So if a community has what they feel is good, as he calls it, ground truth data, in other words, here are all of our addresses, and these are 911, these are addresses that should have broadband. We've got building footprints, so you've got that kind of a layer on the map where you've got the building footprint. Then you can compare that with the broadband fabric data. It says if you don't have those on hand, Tailor works with open data, which may be available in your area. It runs right from your machine, so there's no need to share the fabric with a third party. So you don't need to worry about, are you sharing this data, and can you get in trouble with sharing CostQuest kind of data? So again, there's a video up here, so I will real quickly just show you an example of what's on there with that. Let me come in here. Here we go. Make that full screen. Play just a little bit of this so you get an idea.
Zoom in here and see what's going on with our parcels. Let's go ahead and turn on our fabric layer. Sure enough, these parcels have a building, which is shown in green. Apologies for the horrible color scheme. And these are missing a dot representing a BSL. So these are locations you may want to submit a missing location challenge for based on any additional research you may do. Okay, so let's move on to another layer, BSLs analyzed. So this is a layer that Tailor created by taking the BSL or fabric layer and comparing it to our known addresses based on the address layer that we uploaded. And what it's doing is it's looking to see how many of those addresses match between both data sets. I've applied a filter here, so this is going to show us each red dot that you see on the map is a fabric address that does not match a known address in the city of Chicago. So let's zoom in on one of these and see what's going on. And again, bearing in mind this is mock data. So if we click on one of these points, let's look at the address. So it says 534 West George Street. Okay, let's remember that. And we're going to switch over to our address layer here. Let's see what our official city addresses have. It's 1534 West George Street. So in our mock data, the fabric is missing that initial 1 on the address. This is a pattern that I've seen quite a bit in the National Broadband Map, at least in Chicago. So these are things that you would want to submit a location challenge for. All right, let's take a look at the third and final layer.
So there you go. So that looks really helpful. How hard is it to do? If you, again, I will link to this this broadband.money post right here, and that will link you to the video as well as to his documentation, which is basically the GitHub site. So you see here the GitHub site where you can get this open source software. There's some questions and answers on here. What if I don't have the ground truth data? Do I need to be a coder or database expert? No, you don't. You need to have some technical expertise to kind of run through what he's doing there, but you don't need to be a coder. Again, I'm not supposed to share the fabric. Can I still use Tailor? Yeah, you can, because it doesn't get shared. So anyway, this I thought looked very interesting. That might be something that would be useful for, again, it could be states, communities, other stakeholders that have address information and they've got the fabric information and they're trying to compare the two. So this looks like something that can be very helpful there. So it looks like a good tool. So anyway, thanks for joining me. So again, deadline January 13th. This Friday the 13th is the deadline, but will the NTIA look at challenges that come in later than that? It's certainly possible, as we saw there in that article. And again, I think a lot of times deadlines are to start out with their soft deadlines to try to get people to get the information in on time. And then if they have some wiggle room there, a week or two or a month, who knows how long, if they have some wiggle room there while they're kind of preparing that data, then maybe they'll be able to look at some additional challenges depending on how significant they are, right? Again, thanks for joining me. If you like this video, if you'd give me a thumbs up, I'd appreciate it. And if you're not subscribed, click the subscribe button, click the little bell to be notified when I'm live. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.